So in our previous conversations, when you visited BP in Sunbury, we talked a great deal about the way in which young scientists entering our industry might choose to and want to work. And can you comment on the sorts of changing behaviors or the changing expectations that we as major employers of geoscientists in the future might really need to take on board?
So the world of work is changing, and we see this in the work that we do, but also the data that we collect. So across oil and gas C-suite industries, we asked what are the chances of significant business disruption taking place in your business in the next 3 years? And in oil and gas, I was north of 85% of C-suite said yes, significant business disruption. And I think that is echoing some of the challenges that the industry has been facing and as the transition goes forward. But also, I think you start to see echoes of the way that work is changing. And similarly, one of the key challenges that C-suite will see in talking to us as an organisation about the employment challenges and opportunities is that the rise of contingent workers will continue. The flexibility of the way people work within organisations. The number one reason why people leave the oil and gas industry from some survey that we did we did earlier this year was the lack of flexibility in the way that organisations will allow individuals to work. So I think the fluidity of working in a more collaborative way. You start to see the breakdown of hierarchy in agile working, more collaborative work styles. Means there's going to be some very big changes for large organisations as they try to harness all this great people potential to deliver through a period of potential turbulence, disruption, and change as the industry makes a transition. I mean, some people will find that quite a scary concept. I think it's a really exciting concept because the industry is making this change. It needs to do it in a well thought through, mannered way, but it needs to do it relatively quickly. And so I think for those exploring the industry for employment opportunities, it's going to be right at the centre of quite a lot of opportunities and challenges to fix.
Yeah, I mentioned in a setup conversation the issues that I see, almost the existential issues that we have as a geoscience community, and the idea that a role for life in a major oil and gas company for a geoscientist entering now is something that's very difficult to perceive and foresee, and that my concern, I think, from a senior leadership role in a major oil and gas company is our offer is not compelling, or will cease to be compelling. And so I think one of the insights I'd like to try and understand is how do I keep that? What do we need to do to keep that offer compelling? What is it that how do we set up a young geoscientist to come in and be successful in an environment that is actively changing and going through quite a lot of stress?
So I think the old way of looking at very specific career paths and the way that young scientists will come into organisations and will progress is dissipating. And so I think the employer value proposition needs to pivot. And I think if you look at those core skills that young geoscientists are coming into your organisation, into the industry with. And I think there's a compelling story to say there is ample work, and we need this analytical ability, and there's great software for you to use, and we can take what you have learnt. If you can apply it, we will work with you. But that's not the be-all and end-all of a career. So I think there are opportunities then to have those career pathing conversations that say, well, these skills that you have learnt and that we've helped you develop, and we've co-created great things, how can we develop that into the next phase of your career here at our organisation? You've got skills around digital science, application of technology. These are all key skills that organisations will need as we get deeper and deeper into the energy transition. So I think I think this also suits the conversation for the younger cadre of workers as they come in, because they're saying, well, look, I don't want to be pigeonholed necessarily for a whole generation and lifetime as being, an A, B, or C in an organization. So work with me, major employer. Help me understand how I can develop an exciting, compelling career using the skill sets that I bring with you initially to the organization. So this concept of reskilling, upskilling, multi-skilling, and creating opportunities. So, and I think it's really important that line managers and senior leaders start to really look at the individual's contributions and how they can develop for the benefit of the whole organization. Huge conversation emerging in the industry at the moment around this whole concept of internal mobility. You can't have X because X works in my team, in my department, and I think he or she's going to be a great A, B, or C in years to come. This is very frustrating for bright, energetic, vibrant, younger generation of workers in the workforce, and they want to be able to help to be seen how they can develop a career. So I think that sense of delivering on the promise, but also helping work out how best they can build careers in your organisation without it being seen as in a negative way is probably one of the ways forward.
So I think some of the things you said about entry levels, the people entering our organization and what we can do to make that offer more compelling it resonated very strongly. The other portion that I'm very concerned about are those in our organizations today and potentially, this is true, I'd say, beyond oil and gas, that seeing the emergence of technologies driven by artificial intelligence and machine learning, and that feels like an existential threat to them. And what do they need to do to stay relevant and contributing in, for the remainders of their careers?
So, look, I think organisations need to accept that this is on people's minds. So, somewhere in the region of about 40% of oil and gas employees told us that they were concerned that their jobs would go because of AI in the near term. But that's half the story. Because if you look at the World Economic Forum data and the numbers, somewhere in the region of 58 million new jobs are going to be created because of the digital advances, robotics, AI. So now those are emerging, and I can't point to those yet and say these are the jobs, but there will be opportunity. So a transition that the industry is making does not necessarily mean that my role and my skills will be made redundant. It's a reskilling, cross-skilling, upskilling, and multi-skilling agenda. And I don't think that's just for that sort of mid-career, late-career employee as well. I think the pace and the rate of change as technology becomes even more ascendant through the digital revolution that all industries are facing will mean that rapid upskilling, cross-skilling, keeping in touch with the latest software releases will mean that organizations really have to pivot very significantly to continuous learning to make sure that they've got sufficient skill sets. And there's a lot of work looking at adjacent skill sets. How can I transfer this skill to a new skill that I want? What's the level of training that we can do? Is it cost effective? Of course, there has to be a business rationale and motive to that. So I think the change is a constant in business, and change will be a constant in the energy industry through its transition. And having that open dialogue and conversation is important, but it's not a one-way conversation. It's not your skills are no longer required. That there is no role for you. I think it's your skills as we see them today no longer fill the skills profile we want, but this is how we want to take your skills and transition them to what we need them to be. So I think some of the work that the World Economic Forum Task Force for Oil and Gas has been doing is looking at this whole reskilling, upskilling, cross-skilling agenda. And I think the starting point for the conversation there was how much of this should be, is it appropriate for it to be done by individual organizations? Is there an industry-wide solution here for some of this? Are there themes that can be led by professional organizations and institutes? And understanding that everybody developing their own curriculum and syllabuses and delivering them individually is perhaps not particularly cost effective. But that is changing, a well-ingrained leadership and development model across the industry. But again, the industry's in transition. I think this is absolutely the right time to knock on the door of that and say, is this the right model? Is this fit for purpose? And that then I think goes back to our earlier conversation about the employer value proposition. This is how we will train you. This is how we will make sure your skills are relevant for employability. We hope that's within our organisation, but if not, our part of the bargain is to make sure that you can build a really interesting, compelling career with the basis that you've got as a great geoscientist.
Milan, I think that's a great place to end the conversation, actually. I think that really gives me, a sense of some key themes that as we move forward both in condensing the learnings, condensing the outputs from the skills session or from the larger 4 sessions that we've had over the last couple of days, or that we'll have in Edinburgh, I think thinking not only about technical skill, but how we develop, engage, and continue to reward geoscientists as they move their careers through the energy transition. And that might be initially working in the front end, powering the energy transition in the majors, but then transitioning into the sustainable sectors that will really drive and bring that transition to closure. I think that's it's been a very interesting and an insightful conversation. So really, thank you very much.
Thank you.